Good morning. So today I'm going to be talking about the movie Palo Alto, and I'm going to have a specific emphasis on our romanticization of troubled teenagers as well as age gap relationships. So first things first, Palo Alto is a 2013 movie that is actually based off of a collection of short stories written by James Franco. The movie's got a couple of big names. You've got James Franco himself, you've got Emma Roberts, you've got Nat Wolff, and the movie essentially revolves around four interconnected stories between four teenagers. So you have April, who's in a relationship with her soccer coach. You have Teddy, who is a stoner who ends up on probation after getting into a car accident. You have Fred, who's Teddy's best friend, who has this kind of really increasingly erratic and psychotic behavior that gets worse and worse. And then you have Emily, who is a girl that's kind of known for being a little bit promiscuous, and she ends up getting used and abused by Fred. So a couple of surface notes before I really get into like the meat of what I want to talk about is this movie is so like 2010s. I mean, obviously it's 2013, but it is such a little time capsule into the fashion of the 2010s. You see the iconic like cross print shirts, you see like the Peter Pan collars, and like you kind of get a suburban idea of twee fashion. Like I just was watching this movie and I knew for an absolute fact that this movie was going to be on everyone's like Tumblr dashboards simply because of like the fashion. So I just thought that was kind of funny. So now I want to talk about the like actual like meat of this video. So this movie really started to make me think about how much we as like a society, we live in a society, how much like we as a society really love to tell and romanticize these troubled teen stories. And I mean, you have shows like Skins, you have shows like Euphoria is a more recent one. And I think it's interesting because we as adults are drawn to them because we see ourselves in them. But at the same time, I also think that teenagers see these things and they absolutely eat them up. And after watching Palo Alto, I'm not 100% sure if that's a good thing. So I think on one hand, I think that these shows, like I said, we see ourselves in them. It took me a really long time to watch Euphoria simply because there was a lot of parallels between that and my own like troubled existence as like a teenager. And I think what happens though is when teenagers watch these types of shows and movies, they do end up wanting to live that sort of life. I remember when Euphoria, that's just the example I'm using because it's the most recent type of show that's come out. When Euphoria came out, I remember talking to people being like, oh my gosh, I want to live a Euphoria life. No, you don't. You absolutely do not. I think about my own experiences and I'm traumatized. I'm like a traumatized person now from having that sort of lifestyle. And I think what happens is these shows don't necessarily do a good job at showing the consequences. They do give us craziness and drama, but I also think that we need to stop pretending that these types of movies are cautionary tales because they're not. They're honestly not. I think that they do inspire like younger people to want to sort of live that lifestyle. And I think Palo Alto, going back to the main point of this, does a good job of that because what Palo Alto does as opposed to Euphoria and Skins is Palo Alto does a really good job of hitting you in the relatability department. So you don't necessarily have the crazy over aestheticized lighting that you get with Euphoria and like the glitter and going into school wearing like not much at all, knowing you'd get dress coded. You have fairly normal teenagers, like they're having conversations with themselves. Like you have Fred and Teddy talking in the library about if Teddy's gay, and they're talking about how you get magic mushrooms and certain conversations like that. I was watching this movie and I was like, oh my God, I literally had this conversation with my friends like when I was that age. So I thought that was kind of cool just because of how relatable it was. And then you also get these shots of like teenagers just hanging out in their regular old suburban bedrooms. No one's got a lot of money or anything like that. They're fairly normal. And then you get shots of them being at like parties with like joints and like cheap beer. So I think Palo Alto really does hit you as far as relatability goes. So I do want to kind of take a quick tangent here and talk about how these types of stories can be harmful. And for that, I'm going to kind of use my own experience. So I think the issue that I really have with this movie is that it doesn't really give you any sort of closure. And by not giving you any sort of closure, you never really see the after effects of this sort of lifestyle. This lifestyle of underage drinking, substance abuse, getting involved with people much older than you that you have no business being involved with. And I think what happens is you have a tendency to look back on your life with rose-colored glasses on, and you sort of continue the destructive cycle. Because that's what happened to me. For a very long time when I was a teenager and I was being crazy and way out of control, as I got older, I always did look at my life with those sort of rose-colored glasses. I always saw things as much more beautiful than what they actually were, until someone came along and kind of told me that the experience that I had was not necessarily normal. And then what happens is you end up having like a mental breakdown, and you go to therapy, and you end up with like, personality disorders and things like that. So it's not, the after effects of these sorts of this type of lifestyle is not as great as I think we would want it to be. I do understand there's a point in time for teenagers to, experiment with different things and things like that. But I also think that there comes a point in time where it goes from like cheap beer and things like that to you end up going down a much darker path. And I think my main issue with Palo Alto is you never actually see the effects of what's happened to these people. You don't know if anyone breaks the cycle. You don't know if anyone gets any sort of closure. And so for me, I think that was the thing that I didn't like. It doesn't really show how quickly you can go from just having fun to ending up in a completely much darker, much worse situation. And then these types of movies get marketed to teenagers, and they don't realize what their life could become should they not choose to break their own destructive cycle. One of the parts of this movie I did enjoy, I'm not just a hater, one of the parts of this movie I did enjoy was when April breaks off her relationship with her soccer coach. She sort of has a moment of clarity where she realizes it's wrong because of how much older he is. He even tries to stop her and asks her why she wants to spend time with boys her own age, and what he says is, "Why do you want to spend time with a bunch of little boys?" Excuse me, sir, why do you want to spend time with little girls? Come on. That doesn't make any sense. And I think that a lot of girls go through this experience of getting involved with, not even girls, just people in general, have this experience of getting involved romantically with people that they have no business getting involved with. And what happens is they don't realize how dark that is until much later on. And I just want to say, as someone who spent a lot of time with people who were older and she had no business associating with, I just want to say this for my own self. If someone says that you're mature for your age, you're not. There's a reason why they can't get with someone their own age, and it's not good. And there's nothing wrong with you being your own age. There's nothing wrong with you being immature or being a 16-year-old. There is nothing wrong with wanting to hold on to your innocence, and there's nothing wrong with you wanting to be true to yourself, even though someone who had their innocence taken from them in maybe some sort of darker way wants to take yours. It's okay to just be 16. You don't need to get involved in these horrible things. And if you are someone like me who had these horrible things happen to you, I just want you to know that there is a sort of power in being a victim, because I think when you recognize that something like this did happen to you and it's horrible, the recognition is the first step towards healing. So this video is kind of long, I noticed, but overall, I just want to give the movie a 5 out of 10. I didn't hate it. I think, in fact, if I'd watched this as a teenager, I probably would have loved it. But as an adult, I can see where stories like this sort of end up, and I don't think they end well. And I just wish that Palo Alto had given me some more clarity. But I think it was all right. I just wanted some more. And I think looking at movies like this with my adult eyes versus my teenager eyes, really changes how I view things like this. So yeah,